Well, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm so happy to be here, and I want to say thank you. I spoke here a few months back and shared with you about the work that was going on in South Sudan, and I just wanted to come back and say thank you for the opportunity to give you a report. I was there about a month ago in May, from the 12th to the 15th, and got a chance to visit with Richard Okwera and Kennedy Obura, and they were doing very well. In fact, they send their greetings to you and to say thank you for the efforts and support and encouragement that you also are doing for them. And I want to say thank you for your continued support. You have enabled work to go on in a very far place away from here. And you have touched the lives of people that you may never meet in this lifetime. But I'm confident you will have a chance to meet them in the future. And you're going to be surprised by who and how many those are. I want to talk about that for a minute. And of course, I want to also tell you about something that Tom Langford mentioned many times at Quaker Avenue. In the years that they started doing church work, one of the things that they were concerned about in the very beginning when they started talking about doing church work in Africa, they said, well, we're afraid we don't have enough money and that it will take money away from the other projects and things that we need to do here at Quaker. And they discovered that throughout the time that the Lord supplied, that mission work, he would say, mission work does not cost the church anything. And I believe that is so true. I believe that when we look to somewhere else and when we are evangelistic in our efforts, the Lord blesses us with additional resources from places that we may not even expect. And as a result of it, we are able to do amazing things. I have a picture up here. Let me go ahead and jump. Let's see if it'll go to the next one. It'd be better if I turned it on. I want to begin just to remind you about where South Sudan is. If you look up there, you can see the little spot there in the red circle there. I travel with Jason Moore, who is the youth minister for Quaker Avenue, as well as Dr. Shannon Raines, the children's ministry professor at Lubbock Christian University. She was going. I had talked her into doing all of my work in the sense that I set up 4 seminars in Kenya and 4 in Uganda for her to do area seminars for church leaders about helping to develop greater spirituality and faith among children. And so I'm guessing, I don't have an exact figure, but my guess is somewhere between 60 and 80 churches participated in those 8 seminars in 4 different countries. I sat in the back, drank tea, and ate little fried bread stuff while she did all the teaching, and then I wrote and said, boy, aren't we doing a lot of work, and that whole process. So it was really good to be there. We were there from we left May 9th and came back June 5th, so right at a month that we were there. But before I had students come from LCU on the 16th of May, we had a few days early that we could go into South Sudan. LCU kind of frowns on the idea of us taking anybody into South Sudan since essentially it's in a civil war. And it sounds dangerous in one way, but we were right on the border, not too far in. We're at a place that is very well protected. The government's, it's kind of their supply line coming in from Uganda for all the goods and imported stuff. And so we were pretty safe the whole time that we were there. I was thankful that we were there, and I wanted to just point out a little bit more. If you look at this map here, you can see Kitale in the green down below. We began church work there in 1981, mission work, and then in 95 moved over across the border into Uganda. It's only 60 miles difference. The problem is there's a 14,000-foot volcano that sits in between the two. And then further up into Nimili, into South Sudan, we began working there in 2004, which means that we've been there for 20 years. It's been a while in that whole process. So a lot of work has been going on. And I'm very thankful for that. Each one of them, we feel like the Lord just kind of opened up the opportunity for us in all of that. More specifically, I have a picture from Google Maps. I want you to see there. That's the size of the property. I'm guessing it's somewhere between 5 and 10 acres of land. You can see the main gate up there on the top. And there's a clinic, a dental and eyeglasses clinic on the top corner there with a small guest house. The major buildings that we helped start with was the church training center in the middle, and then Kennedy and Richard's houses, a little guest house, kitchen and dining area. Later on, we had some missionaries from Missouri come in, and they built a couple of houses further down in the property, and they stayed there from 2010 to 2017, and then left. They kind of kept working, and we kind of let them do since they were on the ground people, we let them kind of be the front as far as the work was going. But in 2007, just a couple of years ago, they said, we're wanting to step out of this, go different direction. Their church had a change in leadership. They lost more than half of their church membership, and they were really struggling financially and felt like that they needed to just get out of a lot of stuff. They cut personnel, missions and stuff, and so they had to step out. They were wanting us to just give it up, bring our people back, and I just couldn't do that. I felt conflict at that. And part of that goes back to Rwanda. I may have mentioned this before. If you remember the genocide that happened in Rwanda in 1995, a lot of the missionaries left the country, fled from all of the violence and stuff. And then when it became safe again, they started going back. And the first question that the Rwandans asked the missionaries was, why did you leave? Why didn't you stay and help us in our greatest time of need? And the idea of pulling out during a time when the country's going through civil war, I did not want to stand in front of them sometime in the future and have them ask me that same thing. Why did you leave? I just felt like that we couldn't do that. And so we came in and said, we've got a crisis moment. We're going to have a problem. We need to find the funding that they had lost. The church in Missouri had pulled out. And you guys stepped into the gap. And because of your generosity and mission-mindedness, we've been able to continue this work. In fact, give energy to these guys that will become evident in all of the stuff that's going on. So I just wanted to point out, I don't think I have it pointed out, under the missionary house, the second one, there's a well that we put in down there. The Nile is only about 1.5 miles away. So we dug a well here, and we had to go down 210 feet because we're kind of on a hill. But we hit water, and so that was good to have that water on site. And of course, we put in solar panels and stuff, and they run off of batteries for any kind of electricity that's in there. Let me jump to the picture of the main gate. There's Kennedy Obura on the left with Shannon Rains, and then me and Jason Moore, and we're standing at the gate. The kind of sign that you see there going on, it says Anzara Church of Christ. I don't know if you can see that very well. Anzara Dental Clinic, Anzara Church. Anzara is the kind of the region of Nimili. They have different little subdivisions of stuff in Nimili, and that's what we called it. We're just a little bit outside of that. It's a really cool place to step into. Once you step in, you see the very first thing you see as you go through the gate is the church building. That was the first building that was put up, and I actually have pictures. I could pull out a whole list of pictures here, but if I could show you a picture, when that building was built, there wasn't a tree anywhere around because we planted all of the trees that you see in these pictures. They was just sitting out in the field, and it was just all by itself. And that was our first building that we put in there. If you'll notice, that building has large open windows. Think of this, we're not far from the Nile. It is hot. Oh my goodness. Let me just tell you this. We went up there. I was thinking that we had electricity on the compound. We found out we didn't. So we were staying in those missionary houses. It's with no screens. The screens had rotted off of it. We needed to replace those. Under mosquito nets, because mosquitoes were around. And I spent the night sweating. I sweat the whole night. In fact, you just lay there wondering which way the sweat's going to roll off. You know, which way. It was so hot, and they were miserable nights. And I just came away with a greater appreciation for Kennedy and Richard. I don't know how in the world they do it, but it was miserable, you know, at nighttime. Some people may say, oh, you get a chance to go and do all kinds of great traveling the world. No, I want you to go and sleep in those kind of houses and feel how that is. You get it was just horrible for the nighttime. Another thing about that building is it's not just a church building. We use it to have courses, like in the bottom right-hand corner. For Messiah Theological Institute, we have some extension classes there, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. And another time, we have a seminar like the one on the top right, where we brought the guys in and taught them how to use these solar packs with stories. If you remember, I tried to show you very clumsily last time how to do a solar pack, and we had 3 there for that picture, and we took 2 more with us. So they now have 5 solar packs going around in the villages and creating a lot of interesting stuff. They, you know, if you're in a refugee camp, think of this for a minute. If you're in a refugee camp and you have no lights, no electricity, and some guy shows up with one of these solar packs and says, I'm going to show a movie out here on the side of a house. Well, you can get a pretty good-sized crowd that'll come and watch that. And we have the Jesus film in English, Swahili, Arabic, Acholi, Mahdi. All of those are languages that could be spoken in these areas. And so they put that picture up, and I've got a lot of videos of people sitting there and watching in the dark, and they'll show a sheet hung up on the side of the wall, and people watching those videos in the night. And so those things are going all the time. Unfortunately, I don't have any statistics on that, but I'll get to that. And then, of course, the scholarships. You know, for the last few years, we hadn't been able to do any Bible courses. The people don't have a lot of money, especially if they're in refugee camps. They don't have the money to come to take classes. And so at the fall of last year, Quaker Avenue did a fundraising for scholarships. They told us that if we had $300 per student, $300, think of this, $300, they could teach them 9 courses and keep them for several weeks, and that would pay for their food, for the materials, and for helping with the transport. $300. We made a goal to raise $9,000 to do that, and we exceeded that and raised about $12,000. And so we said, let's get those things started. So in February of this year, they held their first course. They picked 30 church leaders out of more than 60 that wanted to come. But that's the money we had, 30 people for $300 each, $9,000. And we had our first courses, and they taught 3 courses in February, and just recently finished courses 4, 5, and 6. They will do the others in November and do a little small graduation for them. And I'm hoping in the future I'll be able to share with you a picture of a graduation and that. And then they'll give them some documents to show that they are officially, according to the government, preachers for the churches of Christ in South Sudan. So that's kind of going on up there as well. I have the solar pack thing that I'm talking about up there. They have 5 of them. We haven't got all the information done, but just imagine what it's like to be sitting there. Those are some pictures. You can see up in the top right corner part of this movie itself, and somebody's head watching this movie as it's going. And a lot of people, just look at the number of kids that are sitting on the floor real close to this video watching. Others are sitting in chairs, and then so many people will just stand around for 2 hours to watch the movie. That's pretty amazing. And they're amazed at the technology that you have, this little bitty projector and this little bitty cone that can fill an auditorium with sound. It's just really amazing to watch that. And so we've got guys that have been trained in that, and they're taking around, and we're trying to gather up all the information we can on that. I wanted to also show you, oh, there you go. You can see part of the video going on. I wanted to show you our dining hall. There it is right there. We had 2 ladies that came in early in the morning. They came in early in the morning and worked all day preparing any meals for us in that little kitchen area. Do you notice? It's kind of like camping outside. I have never seen anybody so efficient at getting a fire started with wood and sticking in there and just every once in a while just pushing that log a little bit further in there and keeping that thing stoked and then cooking out of those aluminum pots and making such delicious meals. They were efficient. These people know how to cook over open flames. If I was trying to do that, I'd spend all day and still be on breakfast. I don't know how they did it, but they cooked outside, and it was amazing with so few utensils. I need to say that. So few utensils. Such dull knives. I've never seen such dull knives, and yet they can cut, they can do. They would take a bag of flour and make what we call chapatis, and oh my goodness, it was delicious the whole time. And they didn't, I mean, they just sit back, they would talk and in a choli or something, and they would laugh, and they just had a great time the whole time. I'm thinking people here would complain if they had to cook like that all the time on a regular basis. Another picture here I have of the houses. This is a picture of Richard's house or Kennedy's houses. They're side by side each other, and we have a little open air place that we meet with visitors. You know, visitors, it's so hot there that you don't sit inside houses. People like to sit outside in the shade, and so they created a kind of a round circle area where you could sit out there and visit with folks for hours at a time. The houses were built in 2005, and Kennedy and Richard both have a house, and we need to do a little bit of repairing on them. They're not too bad, but we could certainly do better with them. And then, of course, let me give you a couple of examples of some of the church stuff that they do. We started providing, with your help, we decided that what would happen is in a year's time that we would try to have them, they divided all the church work up into 3 areas: South Sudan, north central Uganda, which is tribally linked, and then the refugee camps. So with 3 different regions, we wanted them to visit one region in a month, and then that would be 3 months for those 3 regions, and we wanted them to do that 2 times a year. So 6 months out of the year, they are visiting those churches in those areas. Think about that. So they've done that now 3 times. They've spent 9 months out of the last little bit working on going around and evangelizing in these areas and encouraging the churches to evangelize. A lot of times to do that, they have to travel by motorcycle. Think about the fact that they don't have paved roads like we do here. And sometimes they would get to a place and they would find that the bridge was out, and they'd have to travel down 5-10 miles to find a place to where they could get across the river to get to places. And if you notice Kennedy there in the bottom right-hand corner, he was talking about the farthest refugee camp that they went to. I said, so how did you get to it? And he said, well, across the border into Uganda, rode a bus for an hour, got off, got into a boat on the Nile, and went an hour and a half upstream on the Nile to get off and to get on a motorcycle for 30 minutes to get to the refugee camp. He said it took us all day to do this. And he said by the time we got there, we were just exhausted. We just fell in a bed and slept and then started doing our ministry the next day. I don't know about you, but this is kind of like pioneer stuff. This is kind of like, the old days in the West where people having to do wagon stuff. This is amazing of what these guys go through. And we'll either show a video, they do the teaching, they go to each church and they visit and going around. It's just amazing the kind of stuff that they do to get all of this accomplished in this area. They hand out certificates. One of the things that we did was to be able to get certificates showing that we're legally registered in South Sudan. And so the churches need to have a certificate so that local officials know that they're not just fly-by-night or illegitimate or anything like that. They were able to show paperwork that, no, we're registered with the church and we're part of a recognized church organization here in the country. How would you like to travel by motorcycles? I don't know about you, but that would not be the safest thing that I can imagine, and yet the roads are so bad that there's no way you could get a vehicle down some of these roads. And so they travel by motorcycle, and I think I shared with Nathan a couple of months back where Richard was in an accident, and just his whole face was all bloodied and everything. He spent several days in the hospital because the motorcycle the driver had an accident and threw him off into the road, and he was really hurt pretty badly. He was doing well by the time we got there, but still has some aches and pains from it. But these guys put their life on the line, and they're eager and excited to be able to do that. Another little thing that we're doing is we're able to send some money as they start churches. You know, they're kind of like us here. We don't like the idea. Sometimes people don't like to be a church in a house somewhere. They kind of think like that's kind of sketchy a little bit. And so one of the marks of an established church is building your own buildings. And so what we do is we help deliver iron sheets, contributions to these churches. Usually a church of about 40, 45 people get started. And we spend between $300 and $500 for iron sheets to put a roof on the building, and then that iron sheets last for 20 years. So that's cheap, you know, as a mission expense for our part. And then you see the middle picture there is Richard standing with a bunch of Bibles. We sent money to be able to buy Bibles in several different languages, English and Swahili, and in Luganda and in Madi and Acholi. And they bought Bibles, and then when they go around to the churches, they distribute to church leaders and making sure that our guys have scriptures to be able to read out of. And of course, the ID cards on the right. If you look at that, you can see that we print them up. They put their pictures on it, kind of like a driver's license in a way. We made those so that they go out, because if you go out to a village and you start preaching like in the market or someplace like that, it's not surprising for an official to come up and say, "Who are you? What church are you doing? Have you had any training at all? We want to make sure that you're a legitimate person doing this. Show us some kind of identification." And so they pull out their preacher ID cards. It's kind of amazing that they do that kind of stuff. And then another thing, of course, is they baptize. I want you to know they baptize in any kind of water that you can get in. I have actually been in water myself in a rice paddy field, baptizing in a rice paddy place. There was another place where I started to roll up my pants legs to jump into the water to baptize, and they said, no, we don't want you to do that here. And I said, why? They said, because it has leeches in it. And I'm like, okay, that's a good idea. And so another guy got in and did the baptisms and stuff, and literally had to pull a couple of leeches off of his legs while he was doing that. I said, thank you very much. I'm glad I wasn't the one. Let me go on a side point. I was baptizing one time up in the mountains on Mount Elgon. We were about 8,000 feet up in the forest area. And we had some baptisms. And so we go down, and the water was cold. It was so cold, and we're standing there, you know, in the name of Jesus, you know, we're trying to baptize. But as I'm standing in the water, and I was noticing that there was like 3 trails down to the spot where we were, and there was a guy up probably 20 yards up the way, and he was looking up the trail, wasn't watching us, another one up the trail watching, and there was somebody like sentries almost. And I stopped in the middle of that, and I said, why are these guys up to the places like that? And they just calmly turned around and said, oh, this is the watering hole for the elephants, and it's about time for them to get here. And I'm thinking, why are we baptizing here? What are we doing here? These guys were baptized in all different places. Sometimes by a bridge on a road, and it's interesting the crowd that will come around and to listen to them as they sing, and the people are baptized and how joyful for they are. The middle picture there, you can see Richard is in the water by a bridge, and they're baptizing right there by it. And then, of course, the bottom picture there of Kennedy. He's raising his hand and he's holding a baby. And we do baby dedications there. That sounds kind of weird, but what they do is they ask for us to pray over their children, blessings. And then we give them a card. And you think, what's going on with the card? The card will give the name of the child, when it was born, the names of the parents, the date that we prayed for them, the church, of course, and then maybe have a local official will sign it also, because they'll be there and participate in it. Imagine for a moment that you're in a country that is so poor that you can't get a birth certificate, that the government just is not functioning, that there's no place for you to go, and the people are poor enough that they don't have the ability to get a birth certificate. But you need a birth certificate or some kind of proof of your age so that you can get into school, or for shots or other things you might do at clinics. Well, the church steps in, and we printed baby dedication cards and then handed them out to all of these different churches, so that every time that we do a dedication, we are able to fill those out, and they can put a rubber stamp on them and everything, and we essentially are providing birth certificates for a lot of people. It's an odd thing that you wouldn't think that we would be. We don't do that here in the United States. Thankfully, our government works efficiently enough that we can get that done ourselves by the government. But think of a place that it's not there. What do you do? How do you go about it? And that's one of the ways in which we help with the government. And so you can see some pictures of them baptizing. I get videos. I get lots of pictures of them baptizing people. They'll baptize 10, 20 at a time. The most I've ever seen at one time was 100. So baptized 100 people at one time, and that was pretty amazing, the whole process of that. Just a couple of pictures that I wanted to show. I don't know if you can read all of those names. Pamala Church, Pangira's up there. This one over here is Pajirinya. I'm going to give you a list of churches here at the end of the worship service. I asked you to pray for them. Don't worry, even if you mispronounce it, I'm sure the Lord knows exactly where each of those different places are in this. If you see that, you can see basically Kennedy and Richard traveling around, going to different places and visiting these different churches. And here's another one. You can see the baptism cards and stuff, and the baby dedication cards on the bottom left corner. And you can see in the top middle a whole bunch of kids that have been prayed over. No, I'm sorry, those are baptism cards up there on the top. All of those have been baptized in one day. And of course they do other things, the ID cards, the visitation, lots of different stuff. They send us pictures all the time about what they're doing in the churches there. I wanted to jump from there into our scripture that we've been reading. I know that you've read the story a lot of times about Jesus feeding the 5,000, and if you stop and think about it, he has compassion on the people, and he says, you give them something. First, I wanted you to notice, did you notice how the disciples looked at the situation? They saw a whole bunch of people, and they thought, we don't have the resources to be able to do anything here. We are just a few. We don't have the resources. There's no way we can address the needs of these people. And so they answer Jesus. They give Jesus the answer. They don't ask him, what shall we do? They tell him, send them to the local villages around and let them buy their own food. And I'm sure they're shocked when Jesus said, no, you feed them. I don't know if you've ever stopped to really put yourself in that kind of a situation before, to think about the possibility that Jesus would ever maybe call on you to do something that you think, there's no way I can do that. I don't have the resources to be able to accomplish what you're asking. The task is too big. It's too huge. I don't see a solution or a way forward in this. And then, of course, Jesus has them tell them to sit down in groups, 50s, 100s. Can you imagine having them sit down and do all of that? What do you have? 2 fish, 5 loaves of bread. And Jesus said, bring them to me. There's no way that 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread is going to feed 5,000 people. But we get the story. We know the story. We know what the outcome is that 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread in the hands of Jesus can feed 5,000 people. Now, I want to confess my lack of faith so many times, or my narrow-mindedness on this passage, because so many times I've read this passage and my takeaway is, wow, Jesus can feed 5,000 people with 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread. That was my point. That was the whole point that I got out of that Jesus can take 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread and feed 5,000 people. My total application of this passage is that he can multiply food. I don't think that that's the whole point of the passage. In fact, I've come to the conclusion and realized more and more that God can take a single person with a passion and do mighty things. God can take a small church and the gift that they give and have a huge impact on the kingdom in a very far away place. When he comes to you and says, what do you have? And you say, we don't have much. We have only 2 fish, 5 loaves of bread. But there's no way that can really do anything. And the truth is that whatever you have in God's hands can do miraculous things when we dedicate it to him. I wanted to share a couple of things. Okay, what are we doing? What's been going on? Well, I can tell you that what we have done in the last little bit is that our registration had gone out. It had lapsed, and so we had to get it set back up again. It was $300. You basically registered $300 for the registration for a year. We were 9 years behind. I had no idea that we were, and so we pushed some money together and sent $2,700 to get our registration done. And thankfully, the government was more interested in getting the money than they were to scold us for letting it lapse for 9 years. But we paid up all the way, and we are under a current registration. All of the churches now have legal protection and are considered legitimate in the eyes of those people. So $2,700 all of a sudden makes it easy for these churches to do ministry and to evangelize under the protection of government authority. Additionally, they couldn't have a bank account. To open a bank account for the church there, you have to have a registration that's valid. They didn't have it. They couldn't open a bank account. So you had to have a legal registration and minutes from your committee saying that they want to open up a bank account. So they couldn't do it. So we were sending money every month, but they had to travel all the way down to Mbali in Uganda to get money every month and then travel that trip back carrying a lot of money. It was dangerous. It wasn't safe. And they wasted several days in the process. But with the registration, we were able to open a bank account, and now we can send money directly to them and save days of travel, days of work, safety, everything about it. It makes our ability to do so much easier. Well, one of the first things that we did was we said we need to print baptism cards, baby dedication cards, these letters, certificates of our registration. All of that needs to be in hand, because as soon as we start going out and visiting, the first thing they're going to ask us is, do we have a registration? Do we have baptism card? Do we have any kind of baby dedication cards? We said yes, so let's carry some of those with us. And we bought Bibles, because if we went, they said, well, what about Bibles? We have church leaders here who don't even have a Bible. So we bought all of those kinds of things, and we started printing all of that. Well, We've also completed 2 sets of MTI Bible courses now for 30 church leaders. These guys have traveled around in different regions 3 times. That means 9 months of the last year they have spent going out to the visits. On the other months, they spend the month in the compound hosting the Bible courses. And so they do that. Well, we delivered certificates of registration. We've handed out preacher ID cards. A lot. They baptized, I don't know, I wrote the word dozens up there. I was afraid to say hundreds, but I know they've done hundreds. I've got that many pictures myself of all the people that they're baptizing. They're baptizing a lot of people. And we have, I know, delivered iron sheets to at least 2 churches, maybe 3. So far. And then we've trained guys in doing those solar packs, and so they're out showing films everywhere. And you think, wow, that's a lot of stuff that they're getting done. I need to say that we've also distributed the Bibles, and they're going around and renewing evangelism among the existing churches. 34 churches. Last year in May, there was 34 churches. This year in May, when I went and asked them, okay, so have you been successful? He said, oh yeah, we planted a lot of churches. I said, well, great. How many churches have you and or the churches been able to plant in this last year? And they told me there are 22 new churches, which means a total of 56. Some of that has to be laid at your feet. Think about it. See, we were going to have to shut the doors by June of last year if somebody didn't step in and help. But because of the fact that you guys jumped in and started helping us with funding, we were able to keep the doors open. We were able to enable them, to give them enough money to print and update the registration and go around and visit churches and encourage them. They are on fire. They are on fire right now. And guess what? Your 2 fishes and 5 loaves has impacted 22 new churches in this area. God can take a little and multiply it in humongous, huge ways that we can't even think about in this whole process. Now, here they are. Here's Kennedy on the left and Richard Oqueta. I hate to admit it, these are not the best pictures of them. I spent most of my time visiting with them, talking with them, hugging them, praying with them, and forgot to take good pictures of them. So that's my fault there. But these guys, they're on fire. They are ready to travel anywhere. For several years, they languished with no funding, and they were so frustrated. And when we came in and said, hey, I think we can raise money, they said, stand back, see what we can do. See what we can do with this. And oh my goodness, they are working with passion in this whole process. I don't want you to think that that everything's perfect. There's several needs, and I'm not gonna ask for any money more as far as the church is concerned. I think you guys are doing a great job, but I am gonna pinch you this way. I'm gonna say, would you be willing to give up going out to eat 1 time a month and donating that money for something? Just think about it for a minute. We built a building. I know the Shelburns back here in the back corner would appreciate the fact that Josh Shelburne went over to South Sudan and built that building right there that you see. That was during the time when they were still fighting. You could hear gunfire at nighttime around him. We didn't tell Josh's parents that that was the case at the time that he was building it. We told him that after he got back. But it went well. He built that building. Because of a lack of funding, it shut down. And so it was not working. It wasn't functioning. But the government is so in need of help that they asked the mission to please try and open up again. We took over, thanks to the generosity of a church in Weatherford, we took over 200 pair of readers. You can go on Amazon and buy 24 readers for $30. I mean, it's cheap. And So we took 200 readers with us, and you can see pictures over there. And you see, I don't know if you can tell in the bottom right corner, but that guy's got a smile on his face. And I probably didn't catch it at the right time, but he had a big smile when he could look down and actually read something. Think of this. Think of the impact of what a pair of readers can do for somebody who's living in a refugee camp who doesn't have the money to be able to go to any eye doctor, which is probably 60, 80 miles away. He doesn't have the money. Or a lady who can't see, so that means she can't pick rocks out of rice. She can't thread a needle. She can't read a Bible or a newspaper. And the thing that got me one time is after putting a pair of glasses on a lady, an older lady, she grabbing my face and saying thank you with big tears in her eyes, saying, I can see the faces of my grandchildren now. Man. For $3? Think of that. Think of that. So we helped a guy with a pair of glasses there, but I'm looking forward to the time of having some pictures here where Richard and Kennedy are helping people in refugee camps with eyeglasses. So they've got 200 pair to go with. We're going to go next year, Lord willing, with a group from Quaker, and I'm hoping we're going to be about 20 people going. I would love to have every one of those people carry at least 4 dozen pair of readers with them so that we could make a donation to that eyeglasses clinic. That's a goal. That's a dream for me. Additionally here, I wanted to share the story of David Leroux. David was trained in some field dentistry, and he had worked there with us at the dental clinic, and then when all the money quit, he had to quit and leave. He still lived in the area nearby, but Kennedy and Richard came and implored him, begged him to come back and open up the dental clinic. Why? In Nimile, there is no dental clinic. In fact, there is no dental clinic in the entire province. You can draw a circle, 100-mile circle around that place, and you will not find a dentist. There are certainly no dentists in refugee camps. The government said, please help us. The district hospital sends people to this clinic because it's the only place. David agreed to come back. They're sharing to do dental work. I was humbled by that. I couldn't believe, well, that's not enough to live on. That's not enough to live on. He's doing this out of his own heart to do this. And Kennedy and Richard told me, of all the things we've got going on right now, this is the biggest need right now, is to be able to raise some more funds for this guy, so that we can get that clinic up and going. I can talk about the water well, getting it repaired. It was not working when we got there. They were having to cart water in. We were working on that. The solar batteries had died, and so the pictures down below showed that after we got back into Uganda, we made some phone calls and said, guys, we need some batteries up here so that we can get lights back in those houses. And we got some screens are off, some ceiling boards are out. We're going to have to start up with some new scholarships in the fall, so that next year in February they'll get some stuff. I could keep going on and on and on. The big thing is this: your contributions have made a huge impact in South Sudan and north central Uganda. I was there and I felt overwhelmed by how much work these two guys have done. I was shocked. And they were like, we could have done more. We could have done more. We could have had more people at the Bible courses. We could have had more people. We could have, be showing more videos. We could be visiting more. I think they're doing a major work. You may never meet a South Sudanese But I can't tell you how much your 2 fishes and 5 loaves is making a difference in that country. It's an amazing thing. It is, and I've seen it with my own eyes. It's an amazing thing that you're involved in. One last thing I want to do before I quit. I asked, when Richard told me there were 56 churches, I stopped and I said, excuse me, what? How many? He said 56. I said 5, 6, right? Because I was thinking like maybe he was not saying the right word. Maybe he wanted to say 36 instead of 56. No, 56. And so I said, would you please send me a list of those churches by regions? And so he sent me this sheet here, and the first part is the churches in South Sudan, the other one's in northern Uganda, and then the ones that are in refugee camps. I printed out 50 copies of this. They're on the table right back here in the corner. I have a request. Would you pick one of these up, take it home, and put it on your breakfast table? And every morning I'd like for you to pray for one of the churches. Pray for them, because I know they're praying for you. I would really like that, and I think that would be a good thing to do. I could keep talking forever, but I don't need to. Some of you are probably looking at your watch and like, when? I'm drawing on the spirit of G.B. Shelburne here. Just be able to keep talking for an hour and a half if I wanted to, but I won't do that. I want to say thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much for the work that you're doing and are enabling our brothers in South Sudan to do. And let me just close with a prayer of blessing over you. Father, I ask that you would bless this church. Sometimes that we come to church on Sundays and we look around and maybe we see that our pews aren't full. And sometimes we wonder if we're really making an impact in your kingdom. And I want to confess as a witness that this church is. And I want to say thank you for their generosity. I want to say thank you for their vision and their heart. And I pray that you would bless them. Bless them that they grow closer to you. Bless them that they have a greater fervor for your kingdom, a willingness to reach out to their neighbors, to their community, to other ways in which they can do this, and especially keep their hearts and missions, that they can make such an impact and so far away. Father, I look forward to the day when we can all gather around your throne, and all of those who have been touched by this church and the church at Quaker be able to meet with those who have been impacted by it. We wonder how many tribes, and tongues, and countries that will be. Father, thank you for this church. I pray your blessings on them. In Jesus' name, amen.